Good evening. Good evening. This is the 8th of December, 2025. I want to wish everyone a happy holidays. Hope you are enjoying your season, being safe. And if you're out attending all the holiday parties, that you are doing so in a safe and very responsible fashion. You know, this is a time of year when people are out and about. This is a time of year when people are probably engaging and indulging in too much drinking, too much eating. Just be careful and take into consideration that if you are not able to drive, hand those keys over to someone else, because of all the free flowing spirits at some of these parties, we often, I don't drink, but those of us that do drink, we often indulge too much when the spirits are free. On that note, I want to welcome Stuart to the show, Stuart Boswell, former partner when we had the show on Cats Entertainment Radio. I'm one of the first ones to do the internet thing, and no telling how big it would have been to this day, because that was 16 years ago.
16 years ago. We were on the forefront.
What's interesting though, we talked. We was on the forefront of it. And what's interesting, before we came on the air talking, and some of the same things that are still transpiring now, quality of life issues, were still a problem then. We talked about illiteracy. We talked about lack of leadership. I always recommend people to read the book by Lee Iacocca, Where Have the Leaders Gone? We talked about poverty. And here we are, 2025, almost into 2026. And we're still talking about the same damn thing. Welcome to the show, Miss Sheila. Welcome to the show, Mr. 1213. Happy holidays to you both. Happy Hanukkah. A little bit too early for the Kwanzaa greetings, but at that appropriate time, there will be a happy Kwanzaa coming to everyone. But, one of the things about today's show, Stuart, I woke up this morning and, checking my feed, there was a nice, very detailed article from a gentleman by the name of Hodari P.T. Brown, no relation. And the topic of his article was poverty, illiteracy, and Detroit's silence. How local media and political elites failed a city. In addition to that, good friend of mine, Dr. Ken Harris, he reposted that same amazing post, and he just added his spin on it, how corporate controlled media and political elite fail the city of Detroit. And when we say political elite, we're talking about you Negroes too, that have begged, pleaded, and prodded the Black electorate for their vote, and you have no results to show them. And I say that because illiteracy, as well as poverty, abject poverty in the city of Detroit, is no different today than it was 30, 40 years ago. So what exactly are these elected officials doing for the citizens? One of the things that Hodari talked about is the silence from the media, particularly over the last 12 years when Duggan was in office, how they did not talk about it. But if you remember back in 2013, one of the three standards that the current mayor stated for which to judge him by was poverty, education, crime, and repopulating the city. Again, poverty, education, repopulating the city, and crime. All four of those issues are no fair today than they were 12 years ago. Education, no better today than it was 30 years ago. So it's not just the silence of the corporate community, the silence of the media. I'm also going to hold Black people accountable, because why has there been a silence? I say it all the time. March the 5th, 2017, when I read an article in Detroit Crane's Business Magazine about a 12th grader reading at the first grade level, I specifically wrote an editorial talking about the deafening silence and the lack of outrage. People should have been bent out of shape with regards to learning about a 12th grader reading at the first grade level. And he was not an anomaly. There were plenty of people just like him. and they still don't want to talk about it. So all of a sudden in 2025, you have all these people running for mayor. You have the outgoing mayor Tom out running for governor, and this $4.5 billion plan he has for education. You have a current mayor-elect who wants to focus on education now. My question to both of them, where the fuck were you 12 years ago? Because education is no better now than it was 12 years ago when they first took office. And again, I'm going to repeat, one of the men of Mike Duggan, who is now putting together a $4.5 billion plan for education, was improving education in Detroit. Education in Detroit is abysmal. I don't give a damn who gets mad when I say this. I don't care if you're the superintendent, school board members, which I don't even want to hear from you because you guys are useless. Elected officials, the business community, frats and sororities, all these black people in the blackest city of America have allowed themselves to be so passive, have allowed themselves to be taken for granted and taken advantage of, that no one is talking about education and abject poverty in the city of Detroit. Poverty is worse now in 2025 than it was in 2013 when Duggan won the election. When Duggan became mayor, January 1st, 2014, and when Duggan talked about setting a standard for which to judge him by. But one of the other most important things is on August the 6th, 2013, illiterate cities in the country, but all of a sudden motherfuckers became geniuses and learned how to spell Michael Duggan right?
Now, Eric, when you talk about education and you talk about poverty, how can you solve poverty without solving education?
They both are intertwined with one another. If you fix education, you will fix poverty.
Okay, and so we have a lot of organizations in the city that claim that they're interested in fixing poverty and improving literacy, but those programs, there's never any evidence that they've improved anybody's circumstance, anybody's grade. And I'm trying to figure out, where's the program in the city? Since you always talking about literacy, where's the programs in the city that has measurable results that people go to them and they actually improve? I haven't seen it. I mean, I know Rhonda Walker.
Well, there was, there are some programs, but if there was some proof in the pudding, you still would not have Detroit being one of the worst urban school districts in America, and without a doubt, the largest city in Michigan and the worst standardized scores. So it doesn't add up. So either a lot of money is being wasted or a lot of people are getting rich on the backs of promises to do better by these kids. And it's such a shame. One of the things that Hodari wrote about was, for more than 3 decades, Detroit has lived with one of the most devastating crises any American city can face: widespread illiteracy. Not low reading scores, not minor educational gaps, illiteracy. It is a problem that has been openly discussed in the early 1990s when many Detroit students, including myself, he talked about himself, were in elementary school. Back then, the conversation was blunt and unavoidable. Detroit schools were struggling, families were struggling, and the city's literacy crisis was recognized as both real and urgent. Yet somewhere along the way, that urgency has disappeared.
So what do you think? Well, for me, as a parent, parents want educational opportunities for their children. But what I find is that a lot of the establishment, they want to decrease the amount of opportunities that we have as a parent. Especially if it's a public school, Detroit public school system, they don't want charter schools. They don't want private schools. They don't want you to fund they talked about using funds.
Tutorial programs, right?
Yeah, they don't. Well, we know what happened during the COVID. They had tutorial programs that were suggested for people to catch up. And some politicians voted against, having money allotted to students so they can go out and find tutors to help them with their learning loss. And the issue was they didn't want money going to private companies. They wanted the money to go to a system that was already failing students.
And let's keep it real, Stuart, because we both know that situation, because we know someone that was very involved in that situation. It wasn't just about wanting money to go to already tutorial programs that was failing. They did not want recommendations from the Republican Party to go to private industries to tutor the Black kids in the city of Detroit. So, those type of arguments and fights just goes to continuously prove how both sides of the aisle will continue to fail. And then people always want to ask, what are Republicans doing for Black people? They don't have to do shit for Black people. Black people don't vote for Republicans. So the onus is on those that they support at a 95% rate. And if those people are not willing to help you, then at some point in time, you either gonna have to start diversifying your vote by voting independent and or Republican, or you continue to wallow in the depths of subparness. You continue to wallow in the river lake of subparness, because it makes no sense. Before we go on, I want to welcome Stuart Boswell to the show, my co-host from a previous iteration of Reality Strikes. And as always, we want you to like, subscribe, and share as you are watching the Detroit in Black and White channel. And tonight's presentation is Detroit in Black and White presents Reality Strikes with Eric Brown. Want to welcome Stephanie Jackson to the show this evening. Yes, Miss Sheila, and she's speaking to you, Stuart. They say most parents are illiterate and need help. Ouch. And that's very true. And the sad part about it, you have a Harris Literacy Project down at Wayne State University that focuses on adult illiteracy. You have the Detroit Public Library at one point had to shut down their literacy program due to underutilization. So to your point, Stuart, help is out there. Help is out there. The Harris Literacy Project, Wayne State University. You also have the adult lab over at the main library in Detroit on Woodward. You have Beyond Basics. You have the Dominican Literacy Project. You have Brilliant Detroit. So there are entities out there, but they always say you can lead a horse to water. You can't make them drink it. And that's part of the problem, obviously, in Detroit. People are not willing to drink it or seek out the assistance, but at the same time, they're pointing fingers and placing blame.
But you got
and placing blame at those, placing blame that continue to fail them.
That's true. But you have these literacy programs, but those for adults. What about you got kids coming through the system that are graduating and unable to read? Now they're getting a 4.0, 3.0, but they can't read. They don't score well on standardized tests. And we as a Black community, we don't, for whatever reason, we're negative toward standardized tests. And I'm always asking, well, how do you measure whether your kids are learning in school, other than the fact that they get a 4.0, but when it comes to taking a test, they can't pass the test? And so we lean on this idea that is some kind of biasness. Yeah, it's a bias. It's a bias against your lack of education and your unpreparedness, not your fault, but through the school system that you participate in.
But here's the rub. Hadari, he also talked about when Mike Duggan became mayor in 2013 as a write-in candidate, the tone of local coverage shifted swiftly. For 12 years, Detroit leading media outlets, political influencers, and elite voices all but stopped discussing the literacy crisis that had shaped an entire generation. No major front page exposés, no public pressure campaigns, no sustained outrage. The problem did not go away. The coverage today, Detroit has the highest illiteracy rate it has ever recorded. And its poverty rate is even higher than when the silence began. Yet we are asked to pretend that this is coincidence. It's never a coincidence. And I say all the time, there is profit in poverty. There's profit in illiteracy. There's profit in dumbassness, because as long as you can control the masses by using poverty and illiteracy as the linchpin, you will always be able to control the masses. People go out and vote. They don't do any research. They just go out and vote. They vote on name recognition. You had all these people talking about how important education was. You have a Mary-elect talking about putting an educational czar in. Why was that not done 12 years ago? Constantly saying that we don't control the education system is a bullshit excuse, when you know, everyone should know by now, that the governor said, to hell with the Board of Education, State Board of Education, to hell with the state superintendent. She created a whole nother level of bureaucracy called MyLeap. MyLeap is a program that deals with education from the cradle to the grave. So you don't have to keep saying that we can't usurp the powers of the superintendent. We can't usurp the power of the Board of Education, elected Board of Education. Well, damn it, if they're not doing shit, yes, you do usurp their power.
Okay, but she formed this whole new bureaucracy. It hasn't improved test scores. It haven't improved.
It's too early to tell. It's too early to tell. But one thing I will give her credit for, she went on record during her last State of the State address by saying we cannot keep investing in education and not getting a return on the investment. And someone in a post earlier, someone made it very simple. The last 7 to 8 years that Mississippi went from 49th to 19th in the country, that was a concerted effort to say enough is enough. We cannot keep having our kids not learn. Okay. So the success is imminent if people put an effort into making it a success.
But how do we know when it becomes a success? Because even with Mississippi, at a certain point in time, they were able to determine that what they were putting into the system was getting positive results. So you have a governor that's talking about these things that she's doing as far as education is concerned, but where are the measurables to that? And it shouldn't take 4 years. You should know something in a year.
No, it takes more than a year. It takes more than a year. You like, say for instance, a student going into the 9th grade. Detroit also has one of the lowest eighth grade standardized scores. A student going to the 9th grade already 3 grades behind. Playing catch up is not easy. The Detroit Economic Chamber put out a report. 70% over the last 4 to 5 years, 70% of kids graduating from high school in Detroit were not prepared for college. We're not even prepared for graduation. So it's going to take, based on how bad things are in Detroit, it's going to take more than a year for there to be a measurable result. I mean, you could deal with small groups and bring them up, but the large groups, you're talking about almost 50,000 students. Of that 50,000, I would be willing to bet at least 75% grade level for which they should be at. So it's going to take more than a year.
Maybe we need to break it up in small groups then, instead of trying to do a whole, maybe each school should be measured on their own. Because I know of a program that took kids over the summer and was able to measure results at the end of the summer, that it was vast improvement in their educational outcomes. So this whole idea that we got a bureaucracy that we can't find out what's going on with it until some years pass. Well, what if it's not successful? How do we judge that while it's going on? Who monitors that? And that's the issue. And so
the monitoring is based on increased test scores. The monitoring is easy based on increased test scores. You look at T-Lab, and look at Horizons Over Bound Cranbrook. You have people in those programs that are already exceptional students. So, programs like that are an exception. You don't have 50, 60, 70, 100, 200 people coming in all at once at a very low level. You already have successful students that are in programs to become more successful. So it's easy to monitor those students. It's easy to monitor the students who go out to Cranbrook.
But I don't know about Upward Bound program, but I know T-Lab don't always get exceptional students. They create exceptional students. They get students that score 12 on the ACT. And by the time they leave, within a year, they over 20. And so it
right, but you're still doing it in a smaller group. You have to realize classrooms in Detroit sizes are anywhere from 30 to 35. So it's, and then when you co-teach, you have 60 students in the classroom. So it's not easy if you have 60 students and 75% of them are below levels. You only have 2 teachers. You might have 2 paraprofessionals. It's not as easy, but the willingness to learn has to be there as well. T-Lab and Cranbrook have students with a willingness to learn.
Well, more than anything else, it's a parent thing. You got students.
Yeah, that part too. You have parental engagement. Someone said that, Miss Sheila, parents are embarrassed to get help. They rather let the children learn to teach the parents, and that's a sad statement.
Well, I look at it like this. I used to, when my daughter was young, I thought, I was wondering why more parents weren't interested in education. But when I went to DAPCEP, the enroller in DAPCEP, and I saw the line around the corner trying to get their kid in the DAPCEP program at Cobo, then I realized there's parents out there that really want their kids to have opportunities. They just don't know where those opportunities are. And then if they're in the program, they don't know whether those programs have measurable outcomes for their kids, that measurable positive outcomes. They don't know. But parents want answers. But we got gatekeepers in this city.
But that speaks to the failed leadership, Black leadership, because you don't need the media all the time. You have enough organizations that should be able to disseminate information to the parents. Because you're right, a lot of parents do want to do better for their children, but they don't know where to go. But you have to have, they will have a chicken and spaghetti dinner come election time, come election season, but off season, when there's not an election, how many of these elected officials are having programs such as DAPCEP or co-sponsoring programs with regards to DAPCEP? Upward Bound at Wayne State, Upward Bound at Oakland University, Upward Bound out at Cranbrook, Upward Bound at Central Michigan University. There are opportunities out there. Yes, the big thing is Tech Saturdays. I forgot the full name of it. You're talking about Tech Saturdays over at the new facility, Michigan Central, off Michigan Avenue. So you have programs like that, but those are the shiny objects. It's no different than the Rhonda Walker Foundation, no different than Midnight Golf. Those are the programs people want to be around and involved with. I'm talking about the so-called leaders to say that they're doing something, but you still leaving behind a very large percent of the city. Maybe about 90% of the city. And not everyone in the Tech Saturday, not everyone in Midnight Golf, not everyone in the Rhonda Walker Foundation program, not everyone in the fraternity sorority groups. Not all those kids need the assistance. A lot of these kids don't need it.
But a lot of those kids do need it. Those kids that are in those organizations.
The ones that need it are not the ones there. That's my point.
No, even those people need it. Even those people need it because they're in these organizations with this whole idea that they're being elevated. But the reality is, if you test them when they get there and you test them when they get out, they have not improved and they're still not college ready. Because my friend was up as, executive at a college, and he was talking about these kids from Detroit coming from Cass, coming from Renaissance, coming from these schools and aren't prepared still. They got the high GPAs, but they ain't prepared for college. And if you look at the results that just came from the ACT, test scores from Blacks went down again, and less than 5% or less than 6% are college ready. And so,
that's just like when you were in the hospital, when you're in the hospital, you and Glenn, and Lord bless his soul, he's gone on to be with his Lord and Savior. When we were having a conversation when you were in the hospital, some of the stuff he was telling me was just appalling from the standpoint of how are these kids making it out of their communities into these colleges. Yeah, we all know that colleges, particularly public colleges, are a business. Let's not fool ourselves into not thinking that, but it's doing a lot of these kids a disservice because they're just there taking up space.
Yeah. So, but that's the one thing about Glenn that I would say about Oakland University. That's why, some of these kids, they come and they unprepared. But one thing about that school, they will wrap their arms around these kids to make sure that they get the resources that they need so they can be successful up there. And I think a lot of times when we send our kids to college, we should be making sure we send them places where they can be successful, where they can go somewhere and get help from somebody to help them navigate college. And a lot of times we so enamored by the shiny object. We sending our kids to school and we send them to places that they cannot be a success at, and they need to go somewhere else.
And the homie, you bring up a good point. Why is Nikolai Vitti the superintendent for Detroit Public Schools? And my only response to that is that if his name was Leroy Johnson, his ass would have been gone.
Yeah. Well, he's been a total failure.
For 8 years now. And, the last M-Step scores came out this past August 27th, and they bragging about a less than 1% increase, and they saw that as success. No, that's failure, bro. That's abject failure. When you already are, first of all, you still 66% the state average for third graders. But you're bragging about a less than 1% increase, and you want to make it seem like Detroit DPS is doing great. No, you guys have been, Hodari stated in his piece for 3 decades, 3 decades of 30 years. And one of the other things he talked about when is it coincidence? It is not. The poverty illusion. Detroit's decline behind the headlines in the 1990s. Poverty in Detroit existed, but it did not dominate the city the way it does now. Families own homes. Neighborhoods had stability. Children grew up surrounded by homeowners who knew one another, looked out for one another, and understood their neighbors as investments, not temporary housing. Today, more Detroiters rent than own their homes. That transition alone is a warning sign of deep economic decline. It reflects a shift from generational stability to transient living, from long-term roots to short-term survival. But again, where's the outrage? And I say that all the time. The lack of outrage is so deafening that I'm in Canton, Michigan right now. If you were to go into the church where I do the mentorship program, which is off Chandler and Dickerson, if you were to go in there right now, and you saw a mouse pissing on the cotton ball, the sad part about it, I'll be able to hear that way out here. That's just how deafening of a silence it is with regards to lack of people giving a damn about the educational outcomes of their city. But they were bragging both, Lions this, Tigers that, Red Wings this, Pistons that. They spend more time talking about the great start for the Pistons than they have been talking about the damn recent parents-teacher conferences, which were poorly attended. So the priorities is part of the problem. So the people, the parents have some ownership because they're traveling all over the damn country to go see the Lions, who might not even make the playoff this year. Another false hope of Super Bowl, first time for the Lions. But you don't give a damn about your parents. And I guarantee you that you have long lines at all these malls right now trying to buy some damn Air Jordans. And most of these kids can't even dribble spit.
It's funny, man, you say that, because every time I ride down the street past Baldock Park, the cars line up on both sides of the streets for cheerleading practice and Little League football. But then all of these programs, they hit them with this false idea that these are programs that has an educational bent to it. We want your kid to participate, and we're going to incentivize them. The football is the incentive to get them to become educated or to expose them to education. And what ends up happening, everybody thinking that they have a son or a daughter that's gonna make it to the pros. And like you said, the education part, man, we're not that interested in that because we don't elevate that. And if we elevate education like we elevate sports, then maybe we might do something, because we can excel.
And it's interesting you bring that up, Stuart. It's interesting you bring that up because kind of sort of sports and education go hand in hand. If you put a standard in place that you have to have certain grades to play. If they want to play enough, they will do what is need to be done. And to your point, Ms. Sheila, yes, more people in Detroit rent, and that speaks to Hadari Brown's piece that was on Facebook today. And another point, Mr. 1213 made, and I've shared this. I've shared this whole piece from Dan Rather. And Mr. 1213 is right. Dan Rather did do a special on Detroit school system, calling it a national disgrace. It's a documentary that's about an hour long. I shared that on my Facebook page maybe about 6-7 months ago.
What year was
and that? the response from those that viewed it was the same response you got from learning about the 12th grader reading at the first grade level, a deafening silence. Because at the end of the day, let me morph into Colonel Jessup right quick from A Few Good Men. People cannot handle the truth. And more importantly, our people cannot handle the truth. It's like a kryptonite when it comes to what needs to be said. The situation when it comes to the Black electric politics, this affinity for who they vote for, it boils down to this love affair for what they want to hear, not what they need to hear. They will accept what they want to hear all day, every day. But what they need to hear, they will call someone like myself, someone like you, contrarian. Why you got to be contrarian? No, I'm not being contrarian. I'm just stating the truth. And if you don't know what that means, look the damn word up. You know, so at the end of the day, it's a sad reality that this piece that Hodari P.T. Brown put out is the truth. But how many people will respond to it in a positive way? Because you have a Mary-elect who's made education a part of her platform, no different than making affordable housing a part of her platform, just like the other candidates, even though you cannot gauge what affordable housing is. There's a formula to it. And there are neighborhoods that are combined to come up with this so-called affordable term. But at the end of the day, affordable means what's affordable for you may not be affordable for me. That's the part people do not understand. And as Ms. Sheila stated, when you have so many renters, how can you set a market for affordability when there is a market for renters that you know that's going to be the market? You're going to boost the price up because it's so competitive.
Affordable housing, you have to build homes to have affordable housing. You know, you can't, I mean, because we're still talking about supply and demand. And if you have a low supply of homes, there's no way in the world you're going to get affordable homes. You need to build more homes. And then if you talk about renting, most of us who become successful, we move out of the city. So the only people left in the city are renters and people that don't own homes.
But now, can you break that? You might need to break that down, particularly the supply and demand part. You know, I know, a lot of our listeners are very astute, but they will need to explain it to their family and friends. So
if it's a couple homes that's for sale and we got 10 people looking to buy, I'm gonna raise my price because I can compete in that arena because I got a few homes. But if I got 20 homes and I got only 2 buyers, then of course I could, I would have to lower the price because I don't have the competition. So I'm just saying.
It also states that homeowners in Detroit are seniors that don't have children. And that's the same problem you having with new residents to the city as well, because those new residents are coming into the city and they're coming in at an older age. They're not having kids. And those that are coming with kids, they're not putting their kids in the DPS system.
Well, and is that part of the reason we have renters? Because we have a school system that's broken and not educating people, and you expect homeowners to come into the city and bring their children into the city, and they got a dysfunctional school system. That could be the reason why we have more renters than anything, and less homeowners.
Well, then you have the younger ones. That have not had babies yet, and they still using their suburban addresses.
Mm-hmm.
So when they do have babies, they sending them out to the schools in their parents' community.
You talked about earlier about the media. We don't have a media. We don't have a media out there that's doing investigative journalists. We don't have anybody really doing no hard hitting opinion pieces. We got one newspaper actually. We got one newspaper. They call it the Free Press and the News, but in theory we got one newspaper, and you can't tell me who is the investigative reporter for the News or the Free Press, who's doing investigative reporting for NBC, for Channel 4 or Fox News.
Well, I guess you read my notes. Because that was the next point I was about to make. Where is the investigative reporters?
Yeah.
Journalists? Where is the political accountability? Instead of addressing the worsening poverty rate, the local narrative has been dominated by celebrity development headlines and selective storytelling. And it's interesting that he mentioned selective storytelling because many may or may not know this, but Duggan hired a storyteller as part of his inner circle. And as you can see, only positive stories have been told during his tenure as mayor over the last 12 years. So you're going to hire someone that's only going to tell the stories you want to be told. And that's why a lot of the stories have not been getting out that should have gotten out. Had Steve Wilson still been around, had Bill Bond still been around, right. Jack LaGoff, all these other individuals that are no longer with us, had they been around, some of this shit would have been told in the way that it needed to be told to get people to understand that they're being played like a $3 fiddle.
So maybe we need more independent journalists then. You know, I mean, we got the internet. I mean, we got social media. We got everybody's on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter. Why don't we have somebody that's interested in telling the story of Detroit and doing the investigation? And if I'm a politician, why wouldn't I hire somebody to craft my story? But Duggan is
the problem with having someone to craft your story, they're only crafting it in a positive light. You're not getting, you're only getting the good, you're not getting the bad. And that just goes to, just like what someone stated, or not someone, Hadari stated, the deeper Detroit falls, the louder the cheerleading becomes. A media ecosystem that protects power, not people. The silence speaks volumes. Detroit's media landscape has learned to speak carefully around power rather than truthfully to the public. Since 2013, criticisms of the Duggan administrations have been rare, strategic, or softened to the point of being meaningless. The selective coverage has created a false sense of progress, a curated version of Detroit where development headlines matter more than literacy crisis or poverty spikes. Now, as Duggan prepares a run for governor, not as a Democrat, but as an independent, his supporters and political allies are already shaping the narrative. The last thing a would-be governor wants is attention on the tens of thousands of residents still unable to read at a functional level under his leadership. The media's silence is not accidental.
Well, okay, whoever this, Hadari, but maybe he should have been writing these things long before now.
Oh no, he's been writing the whole time. This is not new for him. He was one of the most vocal critics throughout the election season. But again, you send stuff to the news, they decide what they're going to put out. So that's why people have to go on the social media circuit to write stuff like this. The media dictates, based on what they have been told by the powers that be, what type of stuff will be relayed to the people so they can view it online or hard copy. So throughout the whole campaign, he was very dogmatic, particularly related to the eventual winner. He spoke about things that no one accepted.
I've never heard of him. I haven't seen anything on social media about his criticism of the past election of the mayor elect or anybody that was running. I didn't hear those criticisms. And
no, the whole time he has been. That's why I follow him, because he has been. He's been very vocal. One of the few that has been very vocal throughout the primary season and the general election season, and he's already started his vocalness as it relates to the gubernatorial and senator campaign here.
Okay. I'm out to follow him because I've never heard of him before. And
yes, HODARIPT Brown, like the color. Okay. And for anyone that's listening that want to follow him, it's HODARIPT Brown. And he would have joined us this evening, but he was a little bit under the weather.
Yeah, okay. Because it needs to be a brighter light on him if this is what he's doing, because we don't have anybody in the legacy media doing that. So we need people like him. And he needs to.
Well, even with Charlie the Duff put stuff out there, but they dim his light as well when it comes to the truth telling that he does. ML Elric, they dim his light with regard. Again, if they don't want to hear it, they're gonna do whatever it takes to dim the light of the truth teller, so to speak. Well, and again, I think that's Miss Sheila. You can follow him on Facebook, HODARIPT Brown. You look for him, you search for that name on Facebook and send him a friend request or a follow request, because you don't have to do a friend request. You do a follow request as well. And if you look him up while you're on right now, you will see some of the things he's been saying throughout the campaign season, Stuart.
Okay, put that in the chat.
And even as far as this, one of the things that he speaks very poignantly about, what this says about trust. When a city's most painful and defining challenges are conveniently ignored, downplayed, or transformed into political talking points, only when power shifts, the community loses trust, not only in leaders, but in the storytellers who are supposed to hold them accountable. Trust erodes when illiteracy rises but receives no consistent coverage. Poverty deepens but is framed as a minor statistic. Political ambitions overshadow public suffering. Historic milestones are celebrated without honest conversation about inherited crisis. Media outlets treat truth as optional when it conflicts with preferred narratives. That speaks to what you just got through saying, Stuart.
Well, he definitely has his hand on the pulse, or his finger on the pulse, but we have to make sure that his reach is a lot broader, because that's the kind of opinion that needs to be really focused on and really promoted. But like I said, I've never heard of him at all. But I will pay attention to him for going forward.
Well, part of the problem that you did not hear a lot about him during the previous campaign is that he was not a supporter of the anointed person. So anyone that was not a supporter of the anointed person did not get a lot of play.
Yeah.
I have to get his information and send it to you. Well, I want to get his information and make sure it's okay for me to share it. So with regards to his email address, I will contact him and let him know that people are interested in following him and getting in touch with him. And I will follow back up with that next week, Miss Sheila.
Okay. I see. Okay. I think I met it. Okay. All right.
And then another thing he spoke about, Detroiters are not naive. The silence has been heard. The avoidance has been seen. The narrative management has been felt. Detroit deserves not manufacture storylines. The city of Detroit cannot fix what it refuses to face. Literacy matters. Poverty matters. Housing stability matters. These are not secondary issues. They are foundational to a functioning city, a healthy democracy, and a future that includes, not excludes, Detroit people. For 12 years, Detroit has endured a blackout on its most pressing issues, and elite voices have decided what is acceptable to discuss and what is not. That is not journalism. That is not leadership. That is not service. Detroit deserves better. Detroit deserves media that investigates, not ignores. Your point, Stuart. Leaders who confront the truth, not bury it. My point for the last 50 years. Narratives that reflect reality, not political convenience. Until this city tells the truth, the full truth about poverty and illiteracy, no headline about progress holds any credibility. The silence has lasted long enough, and the cost has been paid by the people, not the power players who created it. The crisis is real. The silence is intentional, and the time to break it is now. I cannot agree with him more.
Okay. How do we
And if you went to his page, you see the same piece that he posted earlier today.
Well, how do we do that? Because we have a compliant media, and we have people who are, they have their own things going on in their life, and they're not aware of these things. And if your kids are out of the school system, or you're a retiree, you have no idea what's going on in the school system. You have no idea that that these kids are being sent out into the world unprepared. So how do we do this? If we don't have a media who's supposed to inform people, if we have leadership, we don't have leadership. We don't have statesmen. We have politicians who go with the wind. They say what gets them elected. They're not caring about, what's in the best interest of their citizenry. If they did, they would tell you the truth, but they don't. So they don't tell you the truth. They tell you what you want to hear. So how do we do
Well, part of the problem, we have to find more people that are willing to say what needs to be said, willing to be unafraid to say what needs to be said, and willing to get crowds of people together that are not just simply going to fall into the same old of going along to get along. And as Miss Sheila said, big money, again, it's big money dance dealing with the poor. And it's not just dance with the poor, it's taking advantage of the poor, because again, there's profit in poverty. I saw a documentary about a month ago called Poverty Incorporated. That was the international version. The American version will be debuting next year in 2026. And I've seen the highlights of it already. Detroit, St. Louis are two of the cities that will be featured prominently. And people will be able to see for themselves, because so many people continue to be clueless, that poverty is a very, very, very profitable business. I don't know why people don't see that. I don't know why people have not waken up from that notion, but it's the silence from the corporations, big business, big money people. The silence speaks volumes as to be able to prove it's a profitable business.
I'm gonna ask you this. How do we make these problems? How do we make these problems disappear? How do we get them to change when we're slaves to a party? We're slaves to one party. And so, and if you're talking about us coming together,
changing that,
talking about truth.
Changing that mindset is going to be the most difficult thing to do, because remember, back in 2012, one of my recommendations was that the Black electorate either sit out a presidential election cycle or vote other than what they're used to voting for. People want to act like people want to. Yeah, we talked about that. People want to act like that suggestion was the most outlandish thing, because I tell people all the time, when someone ridiculously asks me, well, what is the Republican Party doing for you? I say not a goddamn thing, because they don't owe you anything. That's not who you're voting for. How do you, it's no different than you had a baseball football team, Stuart. You don't shop in this store, but you go into the store and ask them to be a sponsor of your team. If I'm the store owner, what probative value would I have to be a sponsor of your team where you're not even a consumer of my store? You're not even a patron of my store. I'm going to tell you to kick rocks. I'm going to say good luck to you. I'm going to wish your team luck, but I'm going to tell you to kick rocks. So this notion of people saying the Republicans are not. First of all, we got to get away from this two-party mentality of foolishness, because at the end of the day, neither one of the parties serves the best interest of no one. I don't care if you're a Republican, I don't care if you're a Democrat. You cannot tell me, if all you fools that vote straight party ticket, be it straight party Republican, straight party Democrat, you're wasting your vote. That's a wasted vote, because there's no way you could tell me that the ideology of either or party fits completely with your ideology. So going in there and then it's nonsensical in 2020, 2024, vote blue no matter who. That's the most ridiculous shit in the world too. Well, I'm gonna just go into a ballot box and vote blue because somebody's a Democrat. When I see for myself, somebody put in here about how Jocelyn Benson is doing well in Pontiac and Dearborn. Who gives a damn? What is she doing for the Black community? So encouraging people to vote for her because I don't even know what she's done for Secretary of State. So she won't be getting my vote. Same with governor. It's at the end of the day, what makes her to be the front runner for governor on the Democratic side? You got a white woman that so many of these Black people love, gifting her Gucci glasses or whatever they call them glasses, acting like she the best thing since sliced cheese. But her lieutenant governor, a Black man, is not good enough for you all, that you just gonna fall in line to vote for another white woman to become governor because she has a D after her name. I'm not rolling like that. Garland Gilchrist will be getting my vote in the August primary.
So is Garland Gilchrist, is he being supported by his governor? Her comment when he announced after both Mike Duggan and Gretchen Whitmer used him, her comment was, when was the last time a lieutenant governor won the governorship? I said to Garland Gilchrist, I was at this one event, I said, bruh, you need to just go rogue and say, fuck these Democrats. Just go rogue. You don't need their endorsement. If they're not willing to support you, you running. A lot of people don't even know you're running. And then the governor who you helped get elected go say some bullshit like that. Come on. He gonna go rogue and go what? Run as an independent?
No, not run as an independent, but go rogue and don't depend on the Democratic Party for the support.
All right.
Just run as a Democrat and run your campaign. You're gonna have people that's gonna support you. And if people think that Governor Whitmer did so well, how you going to just excuse him when he helped her get elected?
Exactly, but I mean, she made that calculation. But the issue with that is, when you talked
about Mr. Duggan, thanks for joining us.
You talked about this a while back, that at some point, man, when we gonna leave the party politics alone? Just leave it alone, set out election like you talked about in 2012, or just go and just make your vote where they have to earn it. Because if you think about it, anything you talk about tax credits in the city of Detroit or business credits, that wasn't a Democrat. They didn't propose that. When you start talking about funding, taking your tax money and being a director to the source, to a school source of your choice, that ain't a Democrat saying that. If you talk about charter schools and the promotion of those, they're not Democrats. So why we hold to one party when we should make both of those parties earn our vote by creating situations where we can benefit from it?
And what's interesting with that, Stuart, is you have school of choice as well as charter schools. You have more students in Detroit attending school of choice and or charter schools, which is a principle of the Republican Party, but Black people still going to the ballot box voting for Democrats. You see that the Democratic Party supports the teachers' unions. You see that these schools in inner cities are failing, but you're still willing to go to the ballot box and vote for Democrats who's responsible for all these failing ass schools.
I'm just saying that we don't make them compete for our vote. And so they
creatures of habit. They don't make anyone earn their vote. They're creatures of habit.
They seem to be against anything that's going to actually help Black folks, other than they're good at the rhetoric. They're good at talking about what they can do for Black folks. But when it comes time to policy, I haven't seen a policy initiative that benefits Black folks unless they talking about benefits for the poor. Other than
I mean,
that,
even back in 2020, the presidential election 2020, you had Ayanna Pressley, a member of the squad, or whatever that bullshit gang of contrarians are in the Democratic Party. She even said back then that Black lives only matter during election season. But you're still a card-carrying member of the Democratic Party imploring Black people to vote Democrat. So that's hypocrisy as far as I'm concerned. You will call them out, but at the same time still encourage Black people to not leave the plantation. And it's no different than slavery. My brother Malcolm talked about this, about how difficult it was for people to leave the plantation because they're creatures of habit. You know, it's an unknown if you leave that plantation. So it's an unknown if you leave the Democratic Party, but it should be an easy known because the only thing that can be done is something different. Because at the present time, you're just wallowing in insanity, doing the same thing over and over, expecting different results and getting the same results, which is nothing.
We've been getting the same results. And I don't, like I said, man, I don't care about the party politics at all. I just wish that we would take the opportunity to make parties earn our vote, make candidates earn our vote. And when they don't do what they say they're going to do, then we give our vote to somebody else. That's all I'm saying. And I don't know why, you know, that causes you to get attacked. That causes me to get attacked, that we called all kind of names and flunkies of the white man. And all I'm saying is these politicians need to earn our vote, period. And if they don't have a policy that can help us do the things that we want to do, then we need to look at another direction. And if they were proposing something like tax credits for new businesses, I'm all in for them. If they was talking about, hey, we trying to improve, you know, the educational outcomes of our students, and so we're gonna we're gonna give money for tutoring. But you telling me you against the tutoring because you worried about who gonna get the credit for the tutor? You talking about you worried about where the money going to? You rather the money go to a failing situation, go to the same place that's failing the kids, then give parents the responsibility to find a tutor of their liking and their choice, because you don't think they make that choice.
And you know what the hell, 420. Thanks for listening. Looks like you're a first-time viewer. Thanks for joining the program. Hope to see you back again. While you're here, like, subscribe, and share. And see, to your point, what you just made, you know, there is no good Republican options. Can you name a quality candidate on that side? Well, that's for you to do. I'm not going to tell you who a quality candidate is. That's for you to do your research, Mr. Duckett. You do your research to find out, because there are no quality Democrats on the Democratic side.
And that's the question I'm going to ask him. Where's the quality Democrat? The one that with real policy, something that really is going to affect the life of Black folks in their communities. Tell me that person, and I'm in line with him then, or her. But you can't tell me that either.
This is the you know, it's these type of clapbacks that, you know, bothers me more than anything else, because you have the question being answered with a question. You know, as far as the Senate race, there's no one that, you know, McMurrow, Haley Stevens, you know, neither one of them. You know, one thing I will give Mike Rogers credit for is that he is pro-education. I haven't heard anything, and he's done some things that can be proven with regards to his stance on education. So I'm not a one policy person, but education is something I believe in, and I know he has a better understanding and has been involved in education more. I have never heard Haley Stevens nor McMurrow out in Oakland County, Pleasant Ridge, I think that's where she lives, Huntington Woods. I have never heard her, either one of them, say anything about education. You know, I've been in rooms with Mike Rogers with regard to his support of education, his support of Beyond Basics, his support of ensuring that Black kids get educated. That's what people fail to understand. Those that are for education are for Black kids getting educated. It's no different than the tutorial program that was killed, even though it was coming from the Republican side, even though it was private businesses, when at the same time, that money that was being used to support the same old did not have any positive results. And those are programs being supported by the Democratic Party. So again, maybe next week you'll come back, Mr. Duggett, with an answer to your question that you asked, a question that was in the form of an answer. I mean, we're not playing Jeopardy, so come with some tangible comments when it comes to an R versus a D versus an independent. Thank you, Priorics. That's what people need to understand. At the end of the day, it's about the person. For me, I get less than a damn about the party. I will never be a card-carrying member of either party. I will never, ever again. I have not voted straight party ticket since 1988. I would never vote straight party again for either side. Our Green Party, taxpayer, natural party, I would never do it. That's nonsensical to be that lazy to vote straight party ticket. We'll be coming up on 9:30. Again, I want to thank all the viewers for joining us this evening. The topic, without a doubt, was something needed to be talked about because, again, the silence when it comes to poverty and illiteracy in Detroit is sad. No one is holding people accountable. And I don't say I like Mr. Rogers. He has some interests of mine that I believe in. Let me clear something up. He has an interest in mine I believe in. I'm all about education. I was just asked to be on an initiative in the city north of Detroit. I don't live in that city. But people respect my passion for education. And it's not about who all is on the committee. It's about fixing that community when it comes to education. Mike Rogers is someone that believes in education. So he will get my vote before Haley Stevens or Mallory McMorrow. He will get my vote come August in the primary. And if he's the winner of the primary and it's versus him and Haley or McMorrow, he will get my vote come November 2026. There's no debate for me when it comes to that. So again, I want to thank everyone for listening, watching this evening. Thanks, come back again, like, subscribe, share. And I definitely want to give another shout out to What the Hell 420, first time viewer. Thank you for joining me this evening. And until next week, enjoy the rest of your holiday shopping season, holiday party season, holiday friend visiting season. Be safe. And again, until next week, peace and love. Thank you for joining me this evening. All right. Thank you, Stuart.